Well, I'm glad that today that I have Elizabeth here with me, and she has a lot of experience in promoting partnerships between Africans and Europeans, and she's going to share with us today some from her experiences. But first off, Elizabeth, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Elizabeth and Horlemann. Horlemann because I'm married to a German and have been living here for the past 22 years in this small town, in a provincial town actually, in Krefeld. It's called. It's the North Rhine of Westphalia. It's called so the north of the Rhine. Yeah, basically, what I do is that I call myself a business matchmaker. Business matchmaker is simple because I prefer to use that terminology because my aims are to promote the European or the German-speaking countries to go in and resource or to take up those opportunities in East and Southern African countries. And the same way, I'd like to also promote that the Africans come out in the globalization world to come out and market their products, which they are doing very, very well right now as emerging economies. So their products are also suitable for this market, and I do think that they should be promoting it here in these countries, in the Western countries. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
basically what I do.
Well,
And in addition to that, I have come to find out that it's very, very important that communication is addressed because most of these deals just turn to be sour because somebody did not just understand what the other was implying, although both of them were speaking English. And we're looking at the cultural misunderstandings that come out. You know, those cultural
sure.
landmines. I call them the landmines because somebody had just stepped on a mine and it's exploded, but both of them just didn't know what happened there. So I try to make them to understand exactly what is going on or what is expected to go on, coming from both cultures, that I can know exactly what is going to happen if this person does that. So I just tell them those are the antennas, keep them up, and everything should be okay.
Sure, we talk about being in a global world today, and you and I both. You said you're in a small town in Germany. I'm in a very small town in Texas in the United States, and we're able to network with people all around the world, and we're talking in English. People make an awful lot of assumptions that because it's a global world and we can speak English, that we're going to communicate well and everything's going to go smooth, and cultural differences aren't going to enter into it. What are some of the
Yes.
challenges you've seen with Europeans from the European side trying to partner with Africans?
Well, basically, when we don't talk about the communication, we just look at the problems that the African continent has in itself. Africa is an emerging economy. That's right. We have a lot of governments now working out on putting policies and laws in place to enable investors to just make it easier for investors to invest in the countries, minimizing their risks. But nonetheless, we still have problems with governance. Well, we're seeing, for instance, currently a good example is in Kenya. The elections was held on the 4th of March. It went as it should have gone, which I wouldn't like to politically make any comments because I always want to keep off from the political issues. I don't think I'm the right person to make those comments. But nonetheless, from an investor perspective or from somebody doing business, I find that Africans tend to be over captured by the politics in as a whole, and tend to just they are able to have politics and their lives as two components, so that if one is not functioning, they're only concentrating on fixing that one and forgetting on the other one. And that is an atmosphere that investors really fear, because if they're investing and they're talking about time and delivery schedules, and here we're going to now talk about delivery schedules not being met because people are now very, very, very busy with looking at which government political party is winning or losing. These are setbacks that governments must come up with some sort of a solution to just reduce the amount of political involvement that businesses have to also, suffer from. Much as also businesses, they're not able to have any influence. But I think it is for small businesses that are going into these markets, That is a very important issue.
Sure,
Uh,
yeah, I know. I've seen that myself. It's not a matter of just the governments being involved, having to go through the offices to get licenses and to pay
yeah,
fees. It's a matter of politics.
yeah,
Yeah, what side are you on? Who do you favor? and
yeah, yeah. That's right.
the,
This politic has to be left to politics. But when it comes to to things like getting licenses, the government needs to have a continuous generating machine that is continuously generating machines, irrespective of who is in parliament or who is in power. There has to be somehow, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, somebody that has been out and is looking at an aerial view of these things. That has to be somehow separated
sure,
for them to continue. Security is also one of the biggest issues in Africa. Security has to be managed. There's got to be some security management programs that they are having to ensure not only for the investors and for the foreigners, but also for the citizens themselves.
sure.
This
Uh,
this has to be really an issue that needs to be addressed and seen to it that it is tackled.
Sure, that is one of the main objections or hurdles that I have to deal with as well when I talk to Americans about investing in Africa is this whole
Mm.
security issue. I understand their perspective, but just from you, Elizabeth, how much of that is reality? How much real risk is there involved? I know it differs from one country to the next, but what's your take on the real risk?
When we're assuming that Africa is not one big country, and we're looking at it in their entities as countries in Africa, then we want to look at specific countries and we want to address to really analyze it or specifically on those issues, on those levels. When we take, for example, a country like Zambia, very peaceful,
Sure,
Botswana, exceptionally peaceful. Nothing is going to happen to you. Even a stone may fall on your head. That would be the only risk that maybe you're going to be able to experience there. But when we're looking at countries like, for instance, Nigeria, we're looking at a risk depending on which part of Nigeria you're going to be.
sure,
The risks are, really on the graphics higher and higher. Huh?
sure. Yeah, northern Nigeria particularly, there's big problems there with the terrorism with Boko Haram, and it's probably not the place for Europeans and Americans to go physically. They definitely
And
need to
not,
partner and work with people who are there on the ground, who are less
yeah, or somebody
conspicuous.
really has to have their own security management that
Sure,
can really give them like 1000% assurance nothing is going to happen to you, because there's some areas in parts of Africa that are really dangerous to be in.
sure. And some of them, I think, is maybe just the problem of being in a big city. You know, there are security risks in Dallas, not far from here where I'm at. In any big city, there's problems.
That is also another issue that people, investors, must be also told. You know your own home grounds. You know exactly which roads the no-go roads, and you know why you're not going there, why you've never been
Sure,
there. But when you're going to Africa or you're going to a foreign country, everything is foreign. You really have to rely on somebody to tell you don't go to this road and don't go to that road. And the more they don't go, the more you feel insecure,
sure.
and depending on how you cope with stress, you are going to eventually just say, no, this is just too much for me, there are too many no goes. Yet when this same person, we go with him to Texas, to your country, then he's going to be just telling me the no goes, and they're going to be just equally as many as they would have been in Nairobi or wherever.
Sure, that's exactly right. Well,
Yeah.
let's shift a little bit here, and let's talk about from the African side, from their viewpoint, partnering with Europeans or with Americans. You know, there's the long colonial history that made people dependent. And West Africa, it's still a big problem, and particularly in Francophone Africa. Um, but there were aid agencies who came, and a lot of their programs were not sustainable. And they, as long as the money from the outside was there, then it carried on. But now we're talking about business. When Africans want to partner with Europeans for profit, um, sometimes I have noticed that they still talk in ways that are more like they are wanting some money from people more than really realizing this is a business. We're coming together, we're partnering, and we're both going to put our money together. What have you experienced from your perspective on this?
Well, I've got some two perspectives as far as that is concerned. For one side, I think that to some great extent, the colonial history has dominates a lot in
Sure.
Africa, depending on how good or well, I couldn't say that they did any good, or
Yeah.
depending on how long they were in those countries. So if we take for instance, we look at why are the Chinese successful in Africa? That's a question that people are asking. But the Chinese has gone with absolutely no background history of colonizing that continent and has absolutely no knowledge of how should we treat Africans,
Sure.
inferior, superior. They have gone on an eye level with the Africans and doing business with them. And that is what the Africans want. They want they don't want people coming from the top to the bottom. We know it, we have the technology, we want to give you. They want
Sure.
partners in all its context.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other perspective is also from the African, what you have mentioned. A lot of Africans have not gotten into the entrepreneurship system simply because they have believed a lot in charity. And we're seeing this predominantly because we have the diaspora who have been remitting 10 times more money than aid agencies have been contributing to this continent. So a lot of families are supporting their families on base that are being supported by their families from the diaspora money. So we are seeing generations. This is something that is what really took me by surprise. Second, third generation of people still not able to get up and do anything from themselves simply because there is money coming from the diaspora. So this lack of entrepreneurship attitude is something that the government should also be involved in educating their people to use the diaspora funds to bring in entrepreneurship in the country.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. That's great, and beginning to see more and more of that happening these days. Um, I guess, like myself, you've seen a lot of increase in interest in foreigners investing in Africa. You used to never, you always heard in terms of aid and developmental projects, not so much business. But that has really changed in the last 5 years. It is something rather new, and is something rather bold that I've seen. Um, what have you seen in your experience, an increase in interest in Africa from foreigners?
I've I've seen a very, very strong middle class society in Africa where people are demanding qualities and people are demanding quantities. And as a result, we are seeing a lot, and the government also encouraging a lot of foreign investments. And as a result, we are seeing a lot of people having interest in this market, not only to invest, but also to be part and parcel of its development as it goes along. They would like to have their shares now before the market is saturated, because somewhere along the line it's going to be saturated. But for now, the interest is that we have a very strong middle class. And this strong middle class has its demands. It demands quality. It no longer just takes and says, I appreciate that this thing is there. They want to have it, but in a high quality form. They'd like to have it in a beautiful form, not in a just we want to use it form. They would like to have it with beautiful colors or whatever it is.
Sure.
So yes, we're seeing that a lot of Africans right now are have got the currencies and they are also traveling. One remarkable thing is that I remember as I was growing in Kenya that my parents never went on holiday to any other part of the country. Yeah, we never visited, like you asked me whether I knew this town in Kericho. No, I didn't know. I know that Kericho we passed when we were going to visit my grandmother,
Uh huh.
and that was holiday. But now you're seeing in Africans really looking for holiday resorts, taking 2, 3 weeks holiday, going to Mombasa or going out and doing excursions. This is something that again is very new. They're getting to know their country and not always looking out for I have to go to the America, I've got to go to Europe. They
Sure.
are now appreciating their own countries and across the borders.
Yeah. Sure. Well, in just a few last words here, What words do you have for Africans who want to partner with Europeans? Just some advice.